Welcome to my channel, Dennis the Monk. I am Dennis Vyshkovsky, and today's topic is compassion is a choice. I was speaking with some friends, and we were talking about sympathy and empathy and what's the difference. And we came to understand that sympathy is caring and an understanding for the suffering of others, while empathy is the ability to experience the feelings of another. And it goes beyond sympathy to an emotional meaning. After praying over this and mulling over understanding compassion, the research shows that or recommends, suggests that compassion can improve our physical health, our emotional well-being, and naturally our relationships. Because compassion is a natural human instinct, we believe it's essential to a healthy and fulfilling life. But now, what's the catch? Why don't we experience more compassion in our society, in the world? Why are we at a crossroads of, even politically, people are reaching out and attacking others because they're different? When we attack someone, there's no compassion there. When we can't identify or recognize that the uniqueness and the differences of others is a gift and not a curse or an object to make us crazy and want to attack, the reality is there's something going on inside of us. I love this. This expression I found, and it says the Latin root of compassion means to suffer with. When you're compassionate, you're not running away from suffering. You're not feeling overwhelmed by suffering, and you're not pretending the suffering doesn't exist. That last line caught my attention because, one, if it's something that's natural, that happens, it's something that's an inclination, it's an instinct, then why are we still not a compassionate society? And it goes back to my previous episodes. I talked about the mind, and the mind being the seat of the ego that tells us we're better than or less than. And I talked about the heart, which is the sentinel between the spiritual world and this physical world. And the heart is governed by objective truth and objective love. And when we go into our heart, and in that place where there's objective truth and objective love, it becomes the filter of which we experience, relate, identify with the world around us. It is what I call a discerning spirit, enabling us to recognize the difference between what's happening here and then what's happening in that place I call the heart. This is what I understand about compassion and why we don't see a lot of compassion. We're a wounded society, an extremely wounded society. I don't know when we haven't been, but nonetheless, we're wounded. And what happens, not looking at the world collectively, but let's look at ourselves individually. I come from a history of abuse and trauma and rigidity. So there's so many things that happened in my life. And during the process of going through pain, I chose to keep my heart open, where we have this instinct to protect our heart, to close down. But when we close down our heart, now remember, I'm saying the heart is that place of objective truth and objective love. When we close down that, we close down our ability to interact with the world around us in a natural way we call compassion. Because we can't even experience compassion for ourselves because we've closed down the heart. I'm using that word now in two different ways. We close down our heart, that experience of the world around us because of pain, and we're hurt. And when something triggers that hurt, we usually react and oftentimes attack. Why is there homophobia? It's been researched so many times that many people who have an adverse reaction to men who like or love men and women who like or love women and everything in between is because they're frightened. They see something within themselves It's projected on what they're seeing outside of them, and they need to protect themselves. And oftentimes, people protect themselves by attacking, or we run away. In either case, we're not able to be present to the other. We're not able, if we're not compassionate with ourselves, and if we're not dealing with our struggles and our life and our pain, it interferes with our ability to have not only harmony within ourselves, but to be a source of harmony for the world around us. It becomes more and more difficult for us to be love, to love and be loved. Now, in a previous episode, I talked about the 15 attributes of love, which are found in 1 Corinthians 13. It really plays it out really well. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious, etc. You can look that up. That's what love, that's the definition of love. And for me, my motto is to be loved, to love, and to be loved, which for me synthesizes the fullness and the whole nature of the spiritual, emotional, intellectual world as being a human being and having this harmony. Mind you, if we're not dealing with our pain and our sorrow and our suffering, we harden or close down a part of our heart. Just one element closed prevents us from being objective. It prevents us from having that discerning spirit or that filter of objective truth and objective love, so that I can understand when I'm being loved and when I'm being not loved or being used, etc. It closes down the ability for me to recognize truth objectively. And so I move into a subjective experience of truth that's relative instead of consistent and permanent. Now, with that in mind, in my own woundedness, how can I be compassionate to others? So we talked about sympathy briefly and empathy briefly, but that's an inner emotional, intellectual response. The action to those is compassion. Compassion has the desire and the intention to alleviate someone else's suffering. Now, just think about it. I've seen this before. I don't have children, but I raised my younger brother from the time he was born till maybe, I don't know, 12 or 11 or 12. I see parents, and how often is it that you want to give your child everything that you didn't have? You want to make your child's life easier, particularly if yours was burdened. You want to protect your child from anything that happened to you. But is that really what they need? So for me, it would be easy for me to give to someone or to a child what I think they need based on what I didn't have instead of what they do need. So now let's go to objective love. Is that objective love or is it selfish? If I am looking at my world that way, how can I be compassionate to that person? Because now it gets confusing. What's confusing? Because you see someone that's in pain, and compassion is the intention of trying to remove or subside, do something to help that person with their suffering. But what if they're meant to go through suffering? Because that's the way they need to grow up and develop and learn. Compassion is a choice. Because in that choice of compassion, we're putting ourselves aside when we're having compassion to others. When we're having compassion for ourselves, we also have to put our ego aside, our ego that says we're better than or less than, so that we can be humble. Humility is being honest with self, others, and a higher power, which I choose to call God. When we're compassionate with ourselves, we need to be humble so that we can open ourselves to what is truth, what is real, what are our pains and sufferings and sorrows, and allow it to be and not run away from the pain, not run away from or close down so we don't feel it anymore. So when we're compassionate to ourselves and allow ourselves to heal and grow, it's only then we can truly be compassionate to others. Because that compassion for others is no longer dependent on my experience and what I needed, or what I wanted, or what I didn't get, or what I did get and didn't like. Compassion then revolves around what is the need of the person that requires our compassion, that requires us to alleviate their suffering. An addict can't be alleviated from their suffering until they make the choice to say no more. However, if we have someone in our life that we love that's an addict, we want to end their suffering. We will do anything except for what they really need is we need to let them go. And that's love. We need to allow them to go through that process until they can say no more. Then they can be honest with themselves, others, and their higher power. And then they can make a choice to just say no more. And then we can help them. So the idea of compassion really has to start with ourselves. We need to be able to look at ourselves objectively with love and truth and understand the truth of who we are and then deal with those issues on a daily basis so that then we can have compassion for the world around us. It starts with you and me, and then when we do it, and it's a lot of work, it's something that will grow and change others. I once heard the greatest effective change we can have in the world around us is by changing ourselves. Like a ripple effect, it affects those around us and it just spreads out. Allow yourself to take that deeper look and experience some of the pain that you have so that you can understand where it comes from, what it is, and allow it just to be so that you can begin to have compassion for yourself. And then truly, with true empathy, you can recognize the needs of others in compassion and find an actual, real, tangible way to alleviate their pain and not your own. Have a great day. Thank you for joining me on my channel, Dennis the Monk. I look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same channel, same mustache, at 11 o'clock on Sunday. Have a wonderful day.